What's happening? Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. Good to see you. Good to be here. Is there an echo? Somebody says there's an echo. Is there an echo? I can just fix that right now.
How's that?
Any better? I never know if there is or not. I can tell on this end. Anyway, welcome to the lab. I'm your host again. My name is Joshua. It's good to see you. Good to be here. I'm only 7 minutes late today. Yeah, that's all right. I mean, I do apologize. Sometimes, 7 minutes is pretty bad, but you want to actually start shows on time. Sometimes I do. Most of the times I don't. Actually, most of the time I don't. And sometimes I started just a little bit late or something along those lines. Anyway, so we're going to obviously be talking about the Sebastian Rogers case in lieu of the things that have come out in the last, I don't know, 18 to 20 hours. And, it gets a little odd, the timing of things where people start to leak messages. Look, and for whatever reason there is, to either make somebody else look bad or to change the narrative of maybe what they feel is the narrative. And I don't know if that's exactly what happened. I don't know exactly if that was Chris and Katie that did those things, if they did leak the emails. And it's not even really a leaked email. But as with most things on social media, most things get twisted and used as fodder. And who knows why, other than, there's this whole, there's sides. Okay. Let's just say that there are sides. Some people believe the story that Chris and Katie, put out, and some people believe the story that Seth has put out. Here's what we know about the case: that Sebastian went missing very early in the morning. Law enforcement says there's no signs that he left. They don't know how he left, if he left. They don't know if there's foul play, but they say they have no evidence of foul play. And as we kind of discuss this whole boarding house or reform school or whatever, I have the email here. And from what I understand from this email is that the emails that were exchanged and the programs that were discussed were like, like a ranch school. I'm looking right here. All boys therapeutic boarding school. So Seth allegedly had this conversation with an evaluator, and they were looking at these options because this is something that that Chris and Katie were looking into. They discussed it with Seth. And when they did that, Seth spent some time on the phone with someone who emailed him 4 or 5 different options of schools. And so when you think about it, it's, it seems to be that it's being twisted as nefarious, that there's this like some sort of underlining secret or whatever it is. I really don't know that to be the case. But like as I'm looking at this email, this is an email that was sent to Seth, as Seth then forwarded on to Chris and Katie. I'm looking at the emails, and I mean, I just don't see anything nefarious one way or the other. The one thing that I do understand is that people are saying that, this is motive, or this is that, or this is that. I have no idea if this is motive. I don't know what happened to Sebastian. Everybody claims that they do not know what happened to Sebastian. And that, to me, that's the biggest takeaway from this whole thing. Like, how is it that we're this far along the line? Look, if law enforcement knew this, then, that's who needs to know it. Law enforcement should know these things, these emails or whatever. But I'll tell you this, looking over the emails, I don't see anything nefarious about them on either side, other than when people put these things out as a weaponization. That's kind of how I feel about what's going on here. And we're going to listen to Tony go on Mr. and Mrs. E's channel last night to discuss this. And I'm going to react in real time because I have not heard this entire conversation. I caught about 3 or 4 minutes of it. I wanted to listen to it, and I'll do it as impartial as possible. But one thing I don't understand about it is the timing. And and I get it. Look, I get that you would get tired of being called this or you're being called that, and it just happens in every situation, in every scenario that you could think of. I mean, the Sebastian's been missing for a really, really long time now. I mean, it's like 9 going on 10 months. Before you know it, a year will be here, and nothing of significance has shown up. And I really wish that there was some sort of closure or finality to this situation, this horrific situation. But one thing that I have heard is that one of the rumors is that people are saying that Sebastian was put into, quote unquote, an institution, that they hid him away in an institution, and that's why nobody can find him. I want to tell you this first and foremost. If Sebastian was put in any home, medical treatment center, wherever, and that facility fails to report him, they're in violation of the law. We don't need to know where he is, but he would have to be taken off the missing list. I mean, once you're in the NCIC as missing, everybody has an obligation to tell what's going on, no matter of the situations beforehand. One thing that we can all agree on is that there were issues leading up to Sebastian going missing. And when I say issues, it sounds like there were behavioral issues, and which is, by the way, not uncommon whatsoever. It's just not uncommon for a child to have behavioral issues that have, autism or, whatever else. I mean, it's not an uncommon thing, whether it be at school, whether, it be at home. It's just not uncommon, and it's not his fault. It's just not his fault. And I understand that dealing with those situations are extremely rough for parents. I've seen it personally. I've watched parents deal with it. It is something that I just can't comprehend or know how to deal with. I would have no idea. I would need help learning how to deal with these situations. And I'm going to listen to what Tony said on Mr. and Mrs. E's show. If you want to watch the entire thing uninterrupted with no commentary, God bless you. If we could drop that link in the chat. What's up, ICU? Good to see you guys. See, I just want to say in my honest opinion, all of this is a dang shame. Where Sebastian, bring him home, for God's sakes. I can agree with you there. Exactly, Josh. My 27-year-old autistic son goes through so much every day. It's my responsibility to keep him on track. And what a job it is. What an absolute thankless job. Nobody's going to sit there and pat you on the back and go, good job handling that. Nah, it's just an everyday thing. And like I said, it's no fault of the child. I mean, they can't help that they were born that way. Now they can, from what I understand, they can learn to try to adjust and things like that, but it's not as easy. It's just not that easy. You know what I mean? Hey, Josh Mons in chat, behavioral school, top of my list. Like I said, the chances of him being in any sort of institution without anybody knowing it, I cannot imagine a scenario where Chris and Katie put Sebastian in some sort of behavioral institution and then report him missing. I can't imagine that being the case. Seems a little far-fetched. Now, if he is in any sort of behavioral school or whatever, they would have to report that to law enforcement, the FBI. They can't use, medical, a medical shield against somebody who's on the FBI's missing list. They can't do it. It's not allowed. They have to turn that stuff over. So I don't believe that that's what happened here. I also don't believe it's as nefarious as people are saying. Now, I know that people will make a huge deal. Oh, they discuss it. To me, what it sounds like, and from the conversations that I've had in reading these emails, it sounds like it was something being discussed between two different households amicably, because there were behavioral issues that were needing to be addressed. I don't know. And then ultimately what ended up happening was, well, it was just too expensive. Neither could afford it. I don't know that many people that can afford $5,000, $6,000 a month, up to $10,000 a month. I mean, these programs are astronomical. They're through the roof. There's nothing wrong with needing help, and there's nothing wrong with discussing your options. But it's so much money. I just don't know that many people that could swing something like that. And, I don't care how much money people say that Chris and Katie have, or anything like that. I mean, we're talking, we're talking a lot of money. You can make $10,000 a month and still not be able to afford something like that. You can make $15,000 a month and not be able to afford something like that. That's the truth. A teenager having behavioral issues is normal, but if you have a mom who is not loving, a stepdad that doesn't like the kid, that's a problem. Look, I don't know. I can't gauge her love for Sebastian. Look, if there are 5 CPS reports, and who knows who reported those, and who knows, I don't know. I have no idea what's in those reports. I've never read them. I've never asked to read them. I'm not going to ask to read them. It's not even something, if I did read them, that I could publicly share. I just couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I mean, that is something that I think, but I'll tell you this, 5 reports seems like there's a lot of issues going on. And there was a lot of issues going on heading into the disappearance of Sebastian. Okay, far-fetched. You made your point, and I get it, but where could Sebastian be? Children do not evaporate off the face of the earth. Well, I mean, that's the question. So, I mean, that's really the sum of it. Like I said, I don't. I'm looking at I'm not going to show them because they give the number of the lady and the schools, and I'm just not going to do that. But all it seems like was that there was inquiry. It was sent to Seth, and Seth sent it on to Chris and Katie. Then they all came to the realization, hey, holy crap, this is really expensive. We can't afford it. And that seemed like that was the end of that conversation. Now, in hindsight, if you look back, you go, "Oh yeah, well, leading up to Sebastian going missing, they were looking for behavioral help." I mean, I don't know that many people that have a child that is autistic that don't seek some sort of outside counsel, some sort of counseling, some sort of help, some sort of program, some sort of special program. It's not that serious, personally. So I'm going to play this where Tony joins uh, Mr. E's Crimecast, and you can check them out and sub up to them. Very classy people. I enjoy listening to them. Very, very well put together what they do, and it's hard to find a lot of people that have any sense on any sort of platform whatsoever. It's just, I really do feel like that, man. And I know that they're going to people be like, Josh, how dare you? This is, I'm specifically talking about the situation with the emails in the home. I think that this is something that people are going to trying to turn into something that it's not, something that that is not nefarious on either side. I really don't feel that way. Now, could I be wrong? Of course. Am I wrong? I don't know. It's possible. Let me go ahead here. All right. So I'm gonna just play the part where Tony calls in and just discuss this a little bit for you guys, and then we will
All right. Well, I'm
discuss some more on the other side.
gonna see if that person.
I don't see his face yet, but I see his.
I don't think we're doing a face, but we have a special guest, guys. And if he's still on there, I apologize in advance for not doing that.
When you
sooner.
said you had 2 things to share, I thought that was one of them.
Oh no, I was just talking about Annie Banani and R. Taylor.
Right.
Okay.
And our guest is probably like, what's going on?
Our
here?
guest is like, what? Hello, guest. We just realized you were there.
I'm so sorry, but thank you for joining us, Tony. We've got Tony Mathis here, of course, the spokesperson for Seth Rogers, and
I get the whole spokesperson thing. I really do. I understand it. I personally just think. I mean, I get that he does a lot of the speaking for Tony, or for Seth. Or as the jerk offs like to call him, Sean, because I think it's funny to call somebody by their not real name. Hilarious. Ha 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 ha. Good one. Good one. Good one. I just think he's his friend first and foremost. I mean, that's just my thought.
We appreciate you joining us. How are you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing good, Mr. E. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear perfect.
So once again, 5 CPS reports, but nothing nefarious. Wow. First and foremost, I wasn't talking about the CPS reports. I was talking about the emails. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. That is just not what I said. Okay. It's just not what I said.
You guys did great with the show with Seth the other day. We were just talking about this earlier. I've never seen a live like that where it was moving so fast, and I think they had it slowed down like the slowest rate as possible. We were modding, and trying to block the trolls and that kind of thing, and it was almost impossible that you couldn't even click on them fast enough. But a huge success. You guys had a great, a lot of interest. There's still obviously tens of thousands of people that are still following this case and so supportive of the effort to bring Sebastian back home. And so you all did great. It was a very interesting interview. But I appreciate you joining us today. And I think that if I understand correctly, what you were interested in discussing was maybe helping to clear up some timeline issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. First off, Mrs. E, how are you? And Auntie, how are you?
I'm great. And Mrs. E stepped off for just a second, but I'm doing great. I'm wish it was a little bit warmer where I live because it's supposed to be warm here, but it's not. But other than that, I'm doing great.
And Mrs. E just stepped back in here, so he was just asking how you were doing.
Well, I had to run to the restroom, so I'm back. I'm doing good.
I completely understand that, by the way.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Sounds like you're driving.
I am. I'm out, headed out into West Texas.
And by the way, I asked for specific permission from Mr. and Mrs. E if I could use this. They obliged. God bless them. They're kind of like me. You can use my content when it comes to anything involving any case ever. Because I don't own the case. It's not my case. It's a publicly discussed case, and that's how I feel about it. That's how I'll always feel about it.
What's the song?
Any case
With West Texas.
Oh, this is my video I made. To please nobody else play it.
I don't know.
Old El
Westchester
Paso.
Town of El Paso.
Yep.
Yeah,
Marty Robbins.
Yep.
we're showing our age there.
No kidding.
Oh, we know what
So,
8 tracks are.
So what I'd like to talk about, guys, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to come on and clear some of this up. First thing I can tell your audience is that you guys are here tonight with a group of people that verify, re-verify, as Mr. E said over and over again, try to gain information from a couple or three different sources before they put it out. And unfortunately, and I'm not going to get into mentioning creators by name, but unfortunately, we're dealing with other creators that they really don't verify anything, and it's kind of a pattern with some of these creators. And the latest thing that's out there from a couple creators is that there had been an email sent by Seth Rogers that he was trying to get Sebastian put in a home. I think it started out, September, October, that kind of thing. Even the dates aren't correct. I heard another.
So you're talking about, I believe, well, God, that would be over a year ago. Something that was being discussed, because we all know that there was already discussions of Sebastian going to live with Seth. And I mean, that's confirmed by Chris Proudfoot that this was something that he was working on, because maybe they just didn't know what to do. Maybe they didn't know how to talk and control the situation when it would get out of hand. I don't know. I wasn't there. So it's hard to over speculate on something like that. But I can tell you that when you are a father of a child, that sometimes you will have a much better rapport than you will than a stepfather will. Not because of who the stepfather is. It's just because sometimes children do not look at the step parents as maybe somebody that has their best interest, or maybe they just don't trust them because they come in later in life. Maybe they don't feel accepted by them. I mean, there's a million different reasons. I don't know.
Rumor that something to the effect of Seth was told that, well, they had given Seth a year to get his home in order. And because he couldn't get his home in order, they were going to do something different with Sebastian. That's kind of like it's kind of like a lot of the other things that have happened there locally. It's just not factual. I'll take you guys back. First off, we're familiar with some of these DCS reports that have been talked about over and over again. I think it's important for your audience to know that over the last 2 years, there's been 5 different DCS reports that were filed.
Okay, so let's stop right there. 5 different CPS or DCS or whatever the organization in Tennessee is called there. It is very important that we be a little bit agnostic about this, because we don't know who filed them and we don't know what's in those CPS reports. Now, I know that we can speculate as to the nature of them, but the fact of the matter is we don't know exactly what is in those CPS, but 5 reports obviously shows that there's something going on with Sebastian at home or at school or both, which once again is not abnormal for a child or teenager that has that is autistic and maybe overstimulated, or things like that. I go back to, I understand, when about the belt situation, and some people say that's abuse, and some people say, well, that's just good old fashioned parenting. A kid with sensory issues that's is very reactive and emotional. I can't imagine that would be the right thing to do ever. But I've never dealt with it either. But I mean, I just don't think. I don't think that physically reprimanding a child usually does very much, especially when it's hard for them to understand what they did wrong.
Those
Fi-
those reports started in 22.
So did you say 5, Tony?
Correct.
Okay.
Are these all in the Proudfoot home?
Correct.
Okay,
Now-
I don't think I've ever heard that number before.
So what I can tell you, obviously, we are not allowed to discuss the content of those reports.
Right.
I can tell you that whether they're in one parent's name or the other step parent's name, the allegations are consistently against the step parent. So you can have a DCS report that's filed that may be in the mom's name, but it may be regarding the environment that she is allowing her child to be in. Does that make sense?
Okay, and like I said, I haven't seen these DCS reports. I haven't asked to see them. I haven't asked what's in them. That's just not information that I can, divulge, even if I knew, which I don't. Okay, so someone's Rose Bull call BS DCS or CPS is called and reports when childs get hurt, and there is proof. That's not true. I mean, they show up when there's allegations. So that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's go back to the first of these DCS reports was filed in 22. So fast forward to 23, which would have been, let's say, a year ago at this time. Katie and Chris were actually trying to get Seth to take Sebastian a year before everybody knew that the plan was for him to go to live with Seth. So you look at, I want to say October of 22. Now these dates are rough. They're within a month or so of being accurate.
Okay.
But in October of 22, they had tried to get Seth to take Sebastian then. This is not something that a lot of people know. Well,
I have not heard this. No.
what they're talking about when they say that things could not get in order for him to get Sebastian, it had nothing to do with his home. It had to do with the fact that they wanted him to take Sebastian in the fall of 22, and he had tried to get signed up for the online program with Clarksville schools, and there was a waiting list, and he could not get approved. So he had a conversation with Chris and Katie and told them that he really thought that it would be smart for them to continue to let him finish out the school year and not move him to another physical school in the middle of the year. So that's what happened. He stayed in his, stayed at the school he was at for the remainder of 22 and part of 23. So fast forward to November of 23, we know that there were more DCS reports filed in that month. And we know that on or about the time those DCS reports were filed, Seth Rogers received a call from Chris and Katie that they wanted to put Sebastian in a behavioral center. Basically, you can call it a boys' home. I don't like to call it that. I like to call it a behavioral center.
Okay.
They were having problems with Sebastian at home. They were having problems with Sebastian at school. They were kind of at their wits' end with him.
Once again, not uncommon for parents dealing with children that have behavioral issues. No fault of the child. It's just not. I can't express to you enough how that some kids are just rotten, and they like to. I was one of those kids that liked to be a little turd. That's not this situation. I just do not believe that. I feel that there's the behavioral issues comes from the diagnosis and the overstimulation and autism. I am not an expert at all on those things, but I've been around children that have had those kinds of issues, and it is a lot for a parent to deal with.
According to Seth, they did not have a lot of patience with him, which is why they had a lot of problems that Seth did not have when he was with Seth. So Seth asked Chris and Katie to send him the name of the organization that they were trying to send him to. They sent him the name. The name of that organization was Bledsoe Youth Academy in Gallatin, Tennessee. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that place.
I don't think I've heard of that.
Okay. So that was in November of 23. Seth does research on that specific center. And according to Seth, there had been 5 or 6 childhood deaths associated with that facility.
My
Oh,
goodness.
wow.
So when he
Right.
found that out, he reached out to Chris and Katie again by phone, let them know that under no circumstances was his son going to that facility, and gave them the reason. So they in turn told Seth that if he could find another behavioral facility that he liked better or that he thought was a safer place for Sebastian, they would allow, they would consider that. So the infamous email that people are talking about was simply a forwarded email.
Oddball says, but most of these DPS, Department of, I don't know, calls were before Sebastian was diagnosed with autism. Just because he wasn't diagnosed doesn't mean he didn't have the issues. I mean, you can put a label on anything, but I mean, the root or the core of it is still there. Just because a doctor hasn't slapped a label on him doesn't mean that he didn't have those issues. So I get it, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think that it's. I don't know if autism. I don't think that's something that you gradually develop. I just don't think that.
I have a copy of it, and I will send it to you guys off the air.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
He reached out to a lady that was a behavioral specialist, and she recommended 4 different centers. And the
Okay.
4 centers were, one was in Missouri, one was in Utah, one was in Wyoming, and then the 4th one was in another state. I can't remember what state it was in.
Yeah, and I see right
Okay.
here, there's 4 of them.
So when Seth got that email, the email described in great detail each facility, what they treated, what what they specialized in, a little bit about the facility, and it was basically a synopsis of all 4 facilities. So Seth, on December 1st, simply forwarded that email to Chris and Katie. Again, I have a copy of the forwarding email.
And
So
I've
they did some research,
Oh, sorry.
figured out that
I have that email. I think Mr. and Mrs. E have the email. There's really nothing to it other than the information about 4 different places. So he received that because they were in discussions of Seth, if you can find a better place. So it sounds like Seth reached out to see, it sounds like they were working together on maybe something. I just don't feel that this part of it is nefarious. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't issues in the home. Obviously, there were issues. Obviously, Sebastian had issues and was dealing with a lot. No fault of his own, once again.
those facilities were between $5,000 and $10,000 a month. They decided it wasn't in the cards for the blended family together to be able to pay for that. So that's when they went back to, well, when this school year is over, he's coming to live with you, which would have been in May, which of course Seth said, fantastic.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to go back to Clarksville and I'm going to find out if he is ready to be approved for that online school. Well, in a matter of a week, Seth found out that Sebastian's name had come up, which would have been the second week of December, and that Sebastian had been approved for the online school. Basically, his turn in line had come up. So everything was, was situated there. They quit talking about the behavioral centers or what have you, and just accepted the fact that in May he was going to live with his dad, and it would be his dad that would be dealing with him and any issues he may or may not have. So fast forward to the end of January of 24, there was another DCS report that was filed. We do not have the details of that report because that report was ongoing when Sebastian went missing.
So even
What's going on, Dr. Gary? As a professional, I'm horrified at the idea that private health information has been leaked. Dear Lord, holy HIPAA violations, Batman. I'll tell you that I don't, I think even in the FBI reports and that since he was missing, that they made a point of saying that he does have medical issues and that they're pertinent to him going missing, that they somehow fit in or that people should be aware of it. However, the stuff that was being discussed behind the scenes between the two parents that has now been put out there and is being used as fodder for either side. And I get it. I understand how emotionally charged this situation is. People want to be vindicated and right, and people want Sebastian found, and they want people that are responsible, held accountable. I'm with you. I agree with it 100%. But nothing, in DCS reports or anything like that has been leaked.
Seth has never read this one.
Correct.
And Tony, there's a few questions in chat about this. And if I remember correctly, Seth had to go to an attorney to get these reports in the first place, correct?
The report, yes, all of the reports that I mentioned previously that were not currently open, he had to go to an attorney to get those reports.
This is the part where I don't quite understand how Seth wasn't notified or wasn't in the know about these things. I have no idea. You would think that a partial custodial parent should be informed. And I mean, if that's the case, and if all these things were happening, that we can use the term nefarious there. If all those things were happening, then and a father, if a father was not notified, what a failure. Not on the father's part. I mean, look, I for a while I had split custody of my children when they were younger. And if there was something that had happened where Department of Child Services was called and I was not informed of it, I would lose my mind.
Can I just clarify? So that one that happened in January that Seth has not been able to read, is that is the 5th CPS report that we know of?
Correct.
Okay. Wow.
That's
Now-
insane.
Now, I'm a math guy, but I don't think you have to be a mathematician for this to add up. And I'm certainly not going to come on your show and start getting into accusing anybody, but
No.
get to the point where there's enough DCS reports and it's been made very clear that they don't want to deal with this child. And on February 25th, early February 26th, the boy goes missing.
Wow.
That's incredible. Why didn't one of the questions that popped in my mind just going through when you were giving this timeline? So if he was trying to get him registered for the online school in 2022, but wasn't able
Correct.
to get in because of a waiting list. Why didn't he take him at the beginning of the fall of 2023? Was there? Do you know the reason?
Hadn't been approved yet. They approve them all throughout the year.
So there was even a 2-year backlog on trying to get into that online
Right.
school.
Tony said the first week of December he was
Yeah.
approved for the online school, and that would have been in 2023.
I see.
It was about 14 months it took him to get approved.
And just to be clear for people in chat, Tony said that the last report that Seth could not get because it's an ongoing report has not been closed.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's why he cannot get it.
Someone else in
That's-
chat was asking about a meeting with all parents at the school on.
What, and I am curious, no matter whose side you're on, which there shouldn't be any sides, but there are. Can we all agree that no matter which side, which household CPS was called on, that the other parents, the other biological parent should be informed of said issues? Now, I wouldn't expect one household to divulge that information to the next, but it doesn't matter which side. A biological parent should be informed of issues that are reported to the state, to child services. I don't know anybody that would dispute that. And if you do, I don't know if there's anything for us to talk about. You know, I wouldn't be able to convince you of it. I know as a parent that I would just be horrified. And like I said, I think that we can all agree that it is the other biological parent's right to know these things. It doesn't matter who you are, what side you're on.
February 10th. Do you know anything about that?
Or he might not be
Well,
able to speak on it.
Guys, just like I had to, um, just like I had to gather all the information for you guys on this, I would have to ask that question and gather that information.
Right.
Gotcha.
No, I mean,
This is kind of shocking.
yeah, I don't even know what to say.
So I'm going
So you
to, just in the spirit of your audience knowing that that all of this is that all of this is fact based, and I've verified all of it. Looked at the emails. The first of those 4 places, and you guys can write this down. First of the 4 recommendations was a place called Masters Ranch Academy. That's the Missouri one.
Let me see. I believe Seth was notified. Okay, well, but he's saying that he wasn't. So, I mean, we can either, I'm sure there are people go, well, he's a liar and this and that, and I just don't believe that to be the case. There are many things that Chris and Katie have said that I've questioned, but I have to take them at their word because I have no proof otherwise. Just because you believe it doesn't make it true. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to be, a jerk or anything.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Masters Ranch. Okay.
Exactly.
New Hope Christian Academy was in Texas. Oasis Boys Ranch is in Wyoming. And the one that you guys are probably familiar that there's been conversation about was the 4th one, which is Stillwater Academy in Utah. And that's where a lot of the Tennessee boys go that have these types of issues.
Okay. I'm making notes. Sorry, Tony.
Yeah. And like I said, look, I wouldn't expect the person on the receiving end of a CPS, DCS, or whatever you want to call it, report to want to be forthcoming with that information. They should, obviously. It's the right thing to do. And, I mean, for whatever reason, who knows what the reasons were that wasn't discussed between households. But, to get Carla says here, Seth, why would he have to, why do you have to get a court order to get those? I mean, those should be handed over. Those should be handed over to any biological parent.
And
Well,
at the
that's
bottom of the email, the lady said all of these locations have openings. And this email was from Tara Akers, who was the Assistant Director, Information Services for Residential Schools and Programs.
wow, that is really eye-opening.
But
A great question would be a great question to ask would be, why was Seth never notified by Chris and Katie that there were these issues going on? I mean, like I said, there's I would say a million different reasons, but there's a bunch of different reasons a CPS, DCS, whatever. I think it's DCS, Department of Services for Children, or something like that in Tennessee, can be opened. You would want to know who filed those, why they were filed, and then what would be in those. And I think that's information that everybody, every involved parent should be aware of. Like I said, I wouldn't expect Chris to, if he felt like he did something wrong, or even if he didn't feel like he did something wrong, I mean, I wouldn't expect him to want to turn that information over.
I would tell your
He should, but I could see why somebody wouldn't.
audience that if you are going to pick creators to listen to, before you take something and run with it, look at their track record. And you've got some of these creators that have got things wrong over and over and over again. And it doesn't fit their narrative that it was Chris and Katie that wanted him in a behavioral center. Seth did not control that decision because he was not the majority custodial parent. They were
Right.
nice enough to give him some input, but he also wanted a center that would counsel him for some of the things he had been through when he was younger. And I think we all know what I'm alluding to.
Sure. And should. I mean, that's that is the chat. We're just kind of looking here what people are really heartbroken at this news.
Well,
It's kind of the
and it's my understanding.
consensus.
I want to ask Tony just to clarify this, because I'm seeing people say, why didn't Seth do anything if he knew he knew about the 5 CPS reports? But it's my understanding he didn't know, right?
He didn't know about any of them.
That's outrageous. That's outrageous.
They never notified him. When he got the DCS reports, he didn't just get the ones from November. He got all of them.
I mean, that.
It was his custody, shared custody.
I don't know what they call it in Tennessee. In Oklahoma, it would be joint custody, but it was, it was a weighted joint custody, right? I mean, he only had him every other weekend.
Right.
Gotcha. As long as his rights weren't terminated, he should have had the ability to. I know because I worked in a school system for.
Flamingo Lisa.
Oh crap! Sorry, I don't really think that's the issue. There's a lot of times where children do not want parents at each other's throats. Then there's times that where kids, weaponize parents against each other. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was told to be quiet. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying there's a bunch of different reasons why.
As long as his rights weren't terminated, he should have had the ability to.
The lady said,
One of the questions that popped in my mind just going through when you were giving this timeline. So if he was trying to get him registered for the online school in 2022, but wasn't able to get in because of a waiting list. Why didn't he take him at the beginning of the fall of 2023? Was there, do you know the reason?
Hadn't been approved yet. They approve them all throughout the year.
So there was even a 2-year backlog on trying to get into that online school.
Tony said the first week of December he was approved for the online school, and that would have been in 2023.
I see.
It was about 14 months it took him to get approved.
And just to be clear for people in chat, Tony said that the last report that Seth could not get because it's an ongoing report has not been closed.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's why he cannot get it.
Someone else in chat was asking about a meeting with all parents at the school on February 10th. Do you know anything about that?
Or he might not be able to speak on it.
Guys, just like I had to
let me see, Lisa, let me answer your question here. If all the internet knows this, when the police, why are they not responding? I mean, I know they could be investigating privately, but you would think they would clear the air. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what they're thinking, and it's hard to say, the state of the investigation. They're very tight-lipped about this kind of stuff. Look, this would not be the first time that DCS or CPS or whatever has had lapses in information that should be passed on. I mean, the Harmony Montgomery case comes to mind. You know, there are a lot of times where DCS or CPS, there's a lot of people that work there, and it only takes one person to screw it up, to mess it up if they're not taking it to, as I wouldn't say as serious, but if they don't do their job properly. I mean, these things do happen. Not giving any excuse for it, but it just wouldn't be the first time that there was a failure of communication.
To gather all the information for you guys on this, I would have to ask that question and gather that information.
Right.
Gotcha.
No, I mean,
This is kind of shocking.
yeah, I don't even know what to say.
So I'm going
So you
to, just in the spirit of your audience knowing that that all of this is that all of this is fact based, and I've verified all of it. Looked at the emails. The first of those 4 places, and you guys can write this down. First of the 4 recommendations was a place called Masters Ranch Academy. That's the Missouri one.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Masters Ranch. Okay.
New Hope Christian Academy was in Texas. Oasis Boys Ranch is in Wyoming. And the one that you guys are probably familiar that there's been conversation about was the 4th one, which is Stillwater Academy in Utah. And that's where a lot of the Tennessee boys go that have these types of issues.
Okay. I'm making notes. Sorry, Tony.
And
Yeah,
at the
that's
bottom of the email, the lady said all of these locations have openings. And this email was from Tara Akers, who was the Assistant Director, Information Services for Residential Schools and Programs.
wow. That is really eye-opening.
But I would tell your audience that if you are going to pick creators to listen to, before you take something and run with it, look at their track record. And you've got some of these creators that have got things wrong over and over and over again. And it doesn't fit their narrative that it was Chris and Katie that wanted him in a behavioral center. Seth did not control that decision because he was not the majority custodial parent. They were
Right.
nice enough to give him some input, but he also wanted a center that would counsel him for some of the things he had been through when he was younger. And I think we all know what I'm alluding to.
Sure. And should. I mean, that's that is the chat. We're just kind of looking here what people are really heartbroken at this news.
Well,
It's kind of the
and it's my understanding.
consensus.
I want to ask Tony just to clarify this because I'm seeing people say, why didn't Seth do anything if he knew he knew about the 5 CPS reports? But it's my
He
understanding he didn't know, right?
He didn't know about any of them.
That's outrageous. That's outrageous.
They never notified him. When he got
It is outrageous, but unfortunately it's not that uncommon. Like I said, you find a lot of that in these kind of cases where a child gets put back into the custody of somebody who was not good to them, and then something else ends up happening. That happens a lot. I mean, there's just countless stories like that.
The DCS reports, he didn't just get the ones from November, he got all of them.
I mean, that's that.
It was his custody shared custody.
I don't know what they call.
I think we already did this.
Reports made, all separate incidents, all mostly involving, it seems, the influence. Sorry,
The fifth one's still open.
the fifth one is still open, but they all are directed, or they all involve the step parent in the home. Is the
Predominantly, right?
predominantly, although Katie seems to be named possibly in a couple of these, but more as
Allowing.
but the step right, allowing the situation to occur. So they are having trouble with Sebastian, I guess, at some point, and then around November of 2023, they start having discussions about putting Sebastian in a behavioral school, one locally in Gallatin called Bledsoe Youth Academy. Seth does some research on it. It turns out they've had a lot of, I guess, children pass away under their care, and so he didn't want to approve that. He reached out to a lady.
And Metal Dust says there are several of these private schools located in Alaska as well. I've heard the Alaska thing. I will reiterate this. If there is any, first of all, I don't understand why he would be sent off to a school somewhere and then reported missing by Chris and Katie. That doesn't make any sense to me. But any sort of institution, any sort of hospital, they wouldn't have to tell us where Sebastian was, but they would say, yes, he's been located. And then that would be the end of that. But the problem is he's reported missing. He's on an FBI list. He's listed as missing. They're looking for him actively. So any facility, whatever it is, that does not divulge that information, they will be held criminally responsible. Whoever's decision it would be. That's why I don't believe that to be the case.
Named Tara, who works with this kind of thing, found 4 other really good schools around the country. Those cost between $5,000 to $10,000 per month. So of course that's $60,000 to $120,000 a year. So that was not feasible, for the budget at that point, I guess. And then he gets approved, I guess, sometime in.
By the way, I want to read this quick. These are the prices. $4,200 a month. $5,800 a month. One of them's like $9,000 a month. $9,800, $10,000 a month. I mean, how could anybody afford that?
That winter, before he went missing, to get into the Clarksville school. So then the plan becomes for Sebastian to go live with Seth in May, which we all knew this part of it, that was the arrangement. But then another CPS report comes in January, and we still don't know what's in that report. And neither does Seth, neither does Tony. No one knows because it's an open investigation. And then Sebastian goes missing in February. So there's your timeline. Tony, am I misspeaking on any of that you could tell?
No, and when I spoke to Mr. Rogers, he said that the ongoing one was either at the end of January 24 or the very beginning of February, within that few days there.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. So I assume police have seen it, correct? They'd be able to see it. Investigators.
I think partially.
I would venture to say that they know everything that I'm sharing with you.
Sure. And they probably, even the open one, that wouldn't be off limits for them. They'd be able to subpoena that, I would think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's, that's it's people are so I know you can't see the chat because you're driving. People are just really devastated and heartbroken. They're angry at CPS. That's essentially that's what everyone's kind of saying. It's jaw dropping.
Yeah, that's the response. for sure.
Unfortunately, we knew some little bits and parts of this, but it does kind of make sense. The timeline starts to make some sense, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Well, I had a conversation offline with you and Mrs. E regarding the John Benet Ramsey miniseries that my wife and I watched.
Yes.
And there was an older, they called him the Sherlock Holmes of these types of cases. I think his first name was Lute. But he made a statement when he was talking about the case that so many times people make these cases more difficult than what they are. And I looked at Dana and I said, boy, that one hits home. And,
Mhm.
you start to get to the point where, 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 = 8.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, this is where they should be looking. I mean, it's the first place they need to be looking is right here. If you're ignoring all of this, then you're not, you're not. It's willful ignorance or you're incompetent, and I can't imagine that it's either. I'm sure they are looking at all of this. You know me. I've got the rare opinion or the minority opinion that that law enforcement, this is not a big corruption cover up issue. I've always believed that they are doing a real investigation. It's just a difficult one, and that it's painstaking and it's piece by piece.
They're being careful.
They're being cautious and careful. That's been my belief, and I think they've got to be looking here. I don't know how they're not.
And Mr. E, that I've always shared that opinion with you.
Right.
Yes,
Yes, he has.
And so, what I like to look at a lot of different things and say, well, what if this happened? What if that happened? I like to use a lot of analogies, but if you and Mrs. E had 4 or 5 domestic violence situations at your home, and they came out, and every time they came out, you were the bad guy. You were doing things that you shouldn't be doing. She was claiming that she was scared. You did this, you did that 4 or 5 times over a couple of years. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and Mrs. E is missing. I mean, where would the world be looking?
Sure. Of course. You'd have to check me out first. I mean, you would have to expect it. You'd have to clear me first. If they didn't, they would not be doing their job. So, and it doesn't mean that there's any guilt necessarily with these people, but it definitely needs to be the first place they're looking. And until they can clear that, then they don't really need to spend any time looking anywhere else. There's too many red flags. It's got to be where they are looking.
Yeah, one thing that you've never heard me say, now you've heard Seth say it, you've never heard me accuse them directly of being responsible, but
Sure.
you will hear me say over and over again that I believe that you have to follow the evidence.
Right.
And I don't know what all the evidence is, and neither do you guys, neither does your audience. And I do believe that they are working hard to keep things close to the vest. And I believe that they are following the evidence. I truly believe that.
I do too. There's actually there's little signs here and there, if you're paying attention to it, that they are doing an active investigation, and that it's not just sitting on a shelf collecting dust. I think that's the case. And yeah,
I've got to tell you that I've believed that before in cases, and it just did not turn out to be true. I'm not saying that that's not what happened here or that's what's happening here. I don't know. I don't believe the emails are a big deal. I think that they're being spun to harm one. I think they're being spun to hurt Seth more than Chris and Katie. But I mean, now we're talking that I don't think that that's a big deal. The actual emails, the correspondence. I don't think that that's the issue. What I think is a major issue is the CPS reports and how a father was left out of that. And by the way, if it were the other way around and Chris and Katie were left out of it, that'd be a major problem as well. It's wrong. It's not what should be going on. I mean, people should be informed of what's going on with their children in the other households, especially when you're, a partial custodial parent, a biological parent. It's wrong. And if there is some malfeasance there, if there's a reason somebody or something or whatever is covering it up, then God, I mean, then you have a strong indication that there was just a lot more going on than what's been divulged. Now, is it their responsibility to divulge that information to us? No. Is it their responsibility to divulge that information to the parents that are the concerned parties? Yes.
I'm sure they have way more information than we have. We probably only have 5% of what's out there available
just to start crap, just to stir something up. That's all it is. The emails, I'm telling you, are not a big deal. I truly don't believe that they are at all. I don't think them discussing that is a big deal. I think it was just released to try and smear. It's the same way it's happened to Chris and Katie too. Don't get me wrong. But it's not an actual big deal.
Investigators have got, I guess you guys knew, but we had no idea that there were 5 CPS reports in 2 years. That's outrageous.
It's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. Like I said, Sebastian, I don't think anybody's denying or debating that Sebastian had behavioral issues. God bless him. I mean, he has struggles. It's a terrible thing. It's not his fault. And I get that parents do get frustrated and overwhelmed. How could you not? It's just one of those things where you kind of have to go day by day and just and hope things get better, learn coping mechanisms.
It's outrageous in a lot of ways, even if they
know.
have nothing to do with Sebastian's disappearance at all. It's outrageous. It's unacceptable.
Well, and we now know, Mr. E, that, thanks to a conversation I had with you guys, because I've had my head out of the YouTube world for a little bit, but Sumner County or the TBI, we now have confirmation that they've reached out to 2 different content creators for either an interview that they've done with one of the parents or some evidence that they talked about and wanted to find out, hey, can I get a clip of this? Can I find out where you got that? So they are watching what's going on, which is encouraging to me. Mm-hmm. And it does give us an indication as to which direction they're leaning, to your point, if you're paying attention.
So I didn't know there were 2. I knew about Smiley. I knew they had asked her. I didn't know that there was a second.
You were okay. I thought you were there when I told him.
Oh, maybe I took away. Okay, so there's at least 2. Okay, great. Maybe.
And one of them happened yesterday, by the way.
Right.
Oh, very interesting. That is very interesting.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, so you're not doing that if you're trying to cover this thing up.
Correct.
You're not doing things like that.
Because the moment you do that, based on the information that you're asking for, you're tipping your hat as to which direction you're leaning.
Yeah. So it's a good sign. It's a very good sign that justice is coming.
Agreed.
It really is. It's slow. Justice is painfully slow, but the way these things go is everybody says corruption, corruption, corruption till the day there's handcuffs, and then it's like then they'll be celebrating the police because there's no warm up to it. There's no
Here's the thing about the corruption aspect of it. If there was actual corruption going on, and there's all these other entities involved, the FBI, the Secret Service, the sheriff's department probably would not be inviting them in to help out. I mean, it would have to be there would have to be a lot of people involved in covering something up. And why would they do that?
they're not going to announce the date that this thing's going to be solved. It's just one day everybody's living their lives, and the next day their home's raided.
Somebody's covering something up. I don't think it's law enforcement.
That's kind of how it goes.
Well, and if we could all put our child in this situation, if we could put ourselves in Seth Rogers' shoes, we're all very familiar with the phrase double jeopardy. And
Of course.
When you start talking about bringing your strongest case and getting it right the first time, as much as it pains me to say this, we really don't want them to hurry.
No, I agree. I agree. I am encouraged that they are still gathering evidence, reaching out to creators for interview clips. It's a great sign that they are doing their due diligence. It's just slower than anybody would like. We're an impatient. Everyone's impatient. We all want justice. And
I don't believe that Sebastian ran away. I have not. Maybe at the very beginning, I thought, well, yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. The reason that I don't believe that he ran away is because that there would have been something. You can't tell me that Sebastian would be able to avoid being detected at all. Walking out of his front house or the garage or through the chimney. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's there would be something, some indication that he left. There is no indication that he left, which would lead me to believe that somebody, I don't know who, made sure that he wasn't seen. We go back to the landfills. You think that's just happenstance? It's not. You think that they just decided to put a bunch of agents in jeopardy and stick them in a landfill and dig through it a little bit just maybe on the word of a trash guy? Nah. I don't think so. I don't believe that.
of course, more than anything, there are ways you could look at this situation and
I also don't think that those lights were trash can or a garbage guy.
think maybe he's alive. There are some. It is still a possibility, and so they also have to be cautious for those reasons about how they go forward too. I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I made another comment, and then I'm going to let you guys get back to your show. I made a comment to you guys earlier today that in the one other case I've been involved in, when you're getting over the target as a PI, as a content creator, as a civilian, because you're going to get that phone call from law enforcement that, hey, you've stumbled upon something here and it's not something we want discussed.
Right.
And in a roundabout way, I believe that these content creators stumbled onto something.
Yeah.
Right. There's got to be something there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. because we know how law enforcement feels about content creators. And in order for them to reach out and ask for assistance,
Yeah.
they had
Can't
to,
blame them.
yeah, they had to have had something that either they wanted kept private or that they wanted to take a better look at.
Right.
So,
Well, I think I know you're saying you're going to be going soon. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing all of that information with us. There's so many people invested in this, and just want to discover what the truth is, even if it's painful, like what we've been hearing tonight. That we can't shy away from it. It's the reality, and it gives us a little more clarity on what was going on leading up to his disappearance, which is very important. It's maybe the most important part. But I really appreciate you coming and doing this. Do you guys know? Have you and Seth talked about the next time you're planning on doing a live? Are you doing one this weekend or waiting a while?
we actually have some things we're going to address, and we will be having a guest on with us, and it will probably be this Friday night.
Great.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Great.
Well, we'll
I guess we'll clear our schedules.
clear the decks. If you like us to mod again, we'll be happy to do it.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
yeah, and we'll make sure we promote that when you guys pick a time and all that stuff, and let everybody know about it.
We sure appreciate you guys. Auntie, Mrs. E, you guys have a good evening. And chat, appreciate you guys supporting the E family.
Aw.
Thank you,
Thank
Tony.
you,
Thank
Tony.
you.
Thank you for everything you're doing for Seth, and thank you for coming and joining us tonight.
We appreciate you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you.
Bye.
So just reaction there. Once again, there's two separate pieces of information in that scenario. One of them being the emails, which to me are a nothing burger at all. The 5 CPS reports are hard to ignore, but without knowing who reported them and what's in them. But I do feel that since they weren't divulged to the other parent, there's a reason for that. Why? I don't know. Mr. and Mrs. E did a fantastic job as always. Always appreciated. They did great. They do great work. I mean, I don't know what else to say. And it's just, I got to tell you that as a parent, I would lose my mind. I would just lose my mind. And so, but I will be there Friday. Yes, you heard that right. I'll be there Friday. And we'll try and keep it respectful, and we will try to keep it as factual as possible. Don't let people gas you up, make you believe things are important when they're not. It's really one of those things where any little information, because there is no information, tries to be turned into something that it's not. Okay. It's sad, but it's the reality. Mr. and Mrs. E, thank you so much for that. Tony, we all appreciate it very, very much. Let me just run through this really quick. We got new members. Mama Rissa, thank you so much for joining. Irony Rose, appreciate it. Pamela Ding Dong. Veronica Be True, thank you for joining. And thank you for gifting. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Hey, Jude, I appreciate that. Mally Cat gifted one as well. Thank you for that. Thank you for all you do, my friend. Justin, for all. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you. Tugs on Heartstrings, thank you for your $2 donation. Very kind. Whistle, 11 months. Cool. Boston supports Lana. Thank you. Good to see you. Sweet Tea became a YouTube member as well. I appreciate that very much. Proud Lint Licking Lab Rat. Brittany J, what's up? And Terry F also. Thank you guys so much. Once again, try not to be manipulated into things. You gotta honestly. I'm dead serious about this. I do not believe these emails are a big deal at all. The CPS reports. Well, I'll let that speak for itself. I don't know what's in them, and I don't know who reported them. I just know that those things are never good. I know that. Appreciate you guys. Always. I appreciate your. Thank you very much for that. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you, Pat K. 22 months. Dirty girl. Shout out, mods. Chat was actually pretty good, surprisingly, huh? I mean, the chat was really good. Thank you for that. Thank you for the kindness. There's no reason for me. What a cool chat, dude. Seriously. Have a good night.